can start our discussion now. We have a galaxy of panelists here, and I would like to introduce our panelists, starting with Dr. Ahmed Fikry. The order of introducing the panelists is random. Dr. Ahmed Fikry Abdel Wahab, Managing Director of the Egyptian German company, and he's the Deputy Chairperson for Egyptian Kuwaiti company and a member of government and international organizations. He is also a board member of a number of companies, including El Suwaidi and the Basira company. He holds MA and a PhD from Alabama University in the US. Dr. Gehan Saleh is an economic advisor to the Prime Minister. She held many posts like the Dean of International Maritime and Transport in Alexandria. She's a board member of the holding company for food processing, and she also started the logistic project in Damietta. She worked in a number of international organizations, and she holds MA and PhD from Chicago University. Dr. Khaled Ismail, founder of Kiangel and SYASDA. How can I read these names? This company was acquired by Intel in 2011. He assumed a number of positions. He was a board member of Intel, and he was an advisor to the Minister of Communication. He is a PhD holder from the MIT. He published a number of international papers. He worked as an electrical engineer from 1994, and he was awarded many prizes. Mr. Seif Fahmy, Executive Director of Mona Inc., and Automation Knowledge and Wireless Dynamics. He is a founder. No, I'd like to read the whole bio. He's also a founder of the Egyptian Competitive Council. He is a member of Simplifying Procedures to Promote Investment. So I read everyone's bio, so I should read yours as well in full. Mr. Hany Tawfik, he is the managing director for a number of companies relevant to securities and assets and financing, direct investment and speculation. He also works on capital or venture capital. Mr. Hany Tawfik is the founder of the Egyptian Association for Securities. He is the founder for the association, the Egyptian Arab Association for Investment. He is also a former CEO for the Egyptian Association for Direct Investment. The presentations were interesting, but let me tell you that it's a bit subjective. It's indicative on the climate of starting businesses in Egypt. We might agree or disagree, but all in all, it's a perceptual comparison. So giving some indications should be taken into consideration as a tool for reform, and this serves as an incentive to us to improve our weaknesses. So I will try to view this survey in a positive light rather than a defensive light. That's why we should adopt a constructive approach rather than criticizing this paper or presentation. We should address our deficiency to develop ourselves. A number of new developments took place that might improve the ranking of Egypt. Dr. Ahmed Fikry, we would like to start with you. Would you like to moderate the session, or shall we go back to Dr. Abla to moderate the session? You're the boss, Dr. Abla, anyway. Good morning. We discuss the conclusion of this report on an annual basis, and we are not moving much, we are not progressing much. Let me build on what Engineer Tarek said. Let us look at the positive side. How can we build on the improvements to be more positive? The way I view the indicator is as follows. If I were an investor looking forward to coming to Egypt, then what are the positive things that would encourage me to come and invest in Egypt? Now, two main points that we can improve include macroeconomic stability. So it's called macroeconomic stability. Yes, there are a number of recent developments that might help us progress, but there is still room for development, especially when it comes to debts. As an investor coming to invest, I will definitely think of the debt and the effect of the debt on the independence of the economy. Of course, that now exceeds 100% of the GDP, which is an alarming sign. Second, and we want to delve deep into this point, here I'm referring to labor market. Two main aspects in the labor market are not improving, and this might affect our ranking negatively. First, vocational and technical training. We have been fighting for years to improve the technical and vocational training. Also, there is a kind of a stigma around the technical and vocational training. We want to attract our youth to join technical education and vocational training, and we should also be able to employ them in different companies. So again, as a foreign investor, without improvement on this point, then I would have different question marks in my head. Complementary to that point, this GCI changed last year. 4.0, they added the part 4.0. Remember, digitalization is on the rise, and a lot is happening. Blockchain, AI, big data analytics, and the rate is very fast, and this is outpacing us. We are not moving as fast as the developments are all over the world, so the gap is getting really wider, and if we cannot bridge this gap fast, then we would just go backward and backward, and the ranking would be lower and lower year after year. I'm a bit sad. As an Egyptian citizen, I'm a bit sad. So we are among the worst countries in the region. So we are, only two countries rank below us, Yemen and Iran. So please, we need to move. Bottom line, on the macro level, we need to work a lot, especially when it comes to debt. On the public and private sector, along with the NGOs, everyone should work to rehabilitate our youth, to work in the technical and vocational training. We need to equip people with skills in line with Revolution 4.0. Thank you so much. You focused on technical training or vocational training, and this is very problematic in our society. One of the reasons of this problem is that we do not understand our needs, so we are just shooting in the dark. When we establish training centers, let me ask, are these centers established in the correct places? And do these centers address the demand? We are trying in the center to run. So next month we will issue the results of 1 year study spanning 500 companies all over Egypt in order to identify the needs of Egypt in the coming 5 years and to compare the efforts of the government when it comes to education and training. But generally speaking, I agree with you. The improvement is very modest and slight, and the way we compare ourselves to other countries is very disappointing because investors choose countries. I'm sorry, I cannot hear what the gentleman is speaking. Now he holds the microphone. I'd like to refer to a point. The blue color of the new future will be software programs. So we shouldn't adopt the traditional approach. We should go for STEM education, because the economy will be a digital economy very soon. So next month you will be surprised by the results companies revealed. And the perspective of the companies and the perspective of the government. And Dr. Sahar and her colleague have been working hard for 1 year to issue this findings. Thank you, Dr. Abla. Thank you, Engineer Tarek, for inviting me to this meeting. The National Council for Competitiveness traveled a while ago and brought the first report issued by the World Economic Forum, and the ranking was very low. And when I submitted our ranking to the ministers, they were surprised and they didn't get the importance of the report in the first place. But we study different reports, not only this GCI report. We, as people, working in sectors supportive of the Egyptian economy, we depend on this report because against the backdrop of changing ministers, we need to educate and re-educate people on the importance. But now the word is a bit of a buzzword. People now understand the word, and we need to identify supportive policies to improve our ranking. So I'm telling everyone to study this report to know what can we work on to improve our ranking. The president formed a ministerial committee to study the report, and I don't think they have ever convened till now. We are not a member of this committee, and I was a bit surprised that we were not invited. But it's very important for the government to study the report, to pinpoint the shortcuts to improve the ranking. As Dr. Ahmed said, we work with the FEI on a broad study on technical and vocational education and training. Also, the government is a bit cooperative with us. The Prime Minister and Mr. Gehan revitalized the project of Irada. Irada project studied 150 decrees, and they cancelled a number of decrees. I think they studied a lot, covering the period from 2008 to 2018. So this work involves a number of ministries, and now the work is done under the supervision of the cabinet. And let me tell you that this is due to the report. We also formed a council for business, and then the council will submit a final report. So it's a collective effort asking for changes in the climate of investment or the climate of doing business in Egypt. Thank you, Dr. Seif. When you said that the ministries were surprised, I'm sorry, they are still surprised. I cannot hold myself from saying so. Miss Gehan, you are the advisor to the Prime Minister. There is a committee, right, working. And yes, thank you, Dr. Abla, and I would like to thank the center for inviting me to participate in this meeting. Even before being a panelist, I was very keen to participate in this meeting, because this is one of the major contributions we have to make to raise the awareness and to link economic indicators to the climate of business, because this is not the ultimate goal, but like improving the ranking is not the ultimate goal, but the ranking is a bit indicative, of course, in this regard. So the ultimate goal is the quality of life, improving the standards of living for our citizens. Dr. Ahmed referred to a very important point. He referred to the approach through which we can improve the living conditions. Of course, but the labor market efficiency is also a bit low. Here we are referring to supply and demand and special circumstances. We need to improve the productivity of our workers to increase their wages, because if we want a good quality of life, then people should be able to afford for goods and services to enjoy a good standard of living. And of course, you cannot give people cash if they're not productive. Then people need to increase their productivity first to get good money. So we need to work on that. And of course, productivity has much to do with training, updated training on 4.0 developments. So this is a major point. So we want to have high productivity in order to allow workers to get decent pay. So of course the productivity rate will be higher and the economy will thrive. So I'd like I cannot stress this point enough. Again, if I were an investor, yeah, we all know the GDP per capita is still low. So the savings rate is also low, and this is not enough for the investment we need. So we want investors to invest in us, to inject money and to bridge the financing gap, to have a diversified economy, to enjoy development. But for this to happen, it's a win-win situation. Investors will not come for the sake of us. They will come because there are factors that attract them and enable them to maximize their own profits. So while following the results, I might identify some negative points that can turn to be viewed as opportunities. So of course we're not happy about the negative aspects, but we can build on them. When it comes to imports ratio to GDP, of course this is a challenge, because we need to save hard currency. This is challenging. But as an investor, if I have high rates of imports, and if I study the structure of imports, I might see some of this as production inputs. So investors might want to come to work on the value chains of the product, part of which is imported. So since I have high imports, then they might want to manufacture this here. Also, the size of the market is pretty big. So if we link these two factors together, this means that there is a room for investors to play. This indicator poses a challenge because we want to have other attractive factors. So, for example, we're doing really good on infrastructure because no investor will come to work here without infrastructure. So, we're doing well on that. So, I hope that would be influential in the coming period. These are the two main points I wanted to refer to: imports and the size of the market and the productivity issue.
Thank you, Dr. Gehan. I want to emphasize the 3 points you mentioned. The ranking issue, this is the thing that we have always reiterated since we started to publish the report. If the rank goes high, we shall not be that happy. But if it goes down, we have to be worried because we have to assess and evaluate our status in comparison with the rest of the countries. And we have to take into our consideration the opinion of the public. The weaknesses, of course, they are deemed opportunities for investment internally and externally, and not only to deepen the industry, but as well like filling in the gaps with respect of the labor market. Quality of life, there is no development that's not targeting improving the life of the persons. And if we do not achieve this, so we are very far away. So when we talk about quality of life, we do not talk about training and health and education, but we have to think critically, consider skills of graduates. These are the things that go with the technology. So quality of life is very important. Weaknesses are opportunities for improvement. So this report identifies investment opportunities that are very clear in some fields. So we have to encourage investors to work on them. Youth is the future. This is undoubtedly technology is the future. Entrepreneurship is the future. When we are talking about youth entrepreneurship, so this equals Khaled Ismail, of course. You have the floor. Thank you, Dr. Abla, and thank you, attendees. It's the first time for me to attend, and I'm not an economist, so I do not have to do with big figures like you have mentioned. But I want to comment on simple things. The infrastructure that supposedly we have improved in that respect, and in another part in the report they say that the broadband has been deteriorated. Now the infrastructure or the broadband does not have to do only with roads and bridges, but it's a key part in the infrastructure. And I would like to mention here Eric Schmidt. He was the CEO of Google. He visited Egypt in 2006 maybe. And by coincidence, Dr. Mohammed Nazif and Dr. Tarek were not here, so I accompanied him and I showed him the projects of technology. This was the golden era, and I took him on a tour to the projects, and he was impressed. And at the end of the day, he told me a sentence that destroyed me. He told me, why you are doing this? Give people broadband and leave them. You are you are too involved as a government in many projects that are scattered everywhere, but you have to give people good broadband, and teach them what to do with the internet. So this sentence up to now is resounding in my head. Broadband is internet, enabling people of thinking, of being productive. This is a new system for education, for training, a new system for the whole human beings. And this is the new infrastructure. It does not have to do with roads and streets. People might stay home and work from home. So transportation is not even important now. And the most important thing is to access internet, to conduct conference calls, to have broadband, and so on. Of course, we are suffering from the internet is not that good in Egypt, and this is a big obstacle. That's why all these reports, I took them with a grain of salt, that infrastructure has to be improved. So you mean that there's something traditional, but in case they, of course, mentioned that the broadband has been deteriorated. With respect to job opportunities, they depend on good connectivity, because most of the projects, whether they are applications, solutions, anything, they need people to have 4G, and it's going to be 5G soon. 5G using that can use it and communicate, and thus productivity increases. Productivity of persons increase. This means that the GDP is going to increase. This is the thing that we have a big room for. Traditional things do not have the same room. The other thing, the international trend or the global trend, it's not clear here, the customization. The figures, the statistical figures, the general ones are misleading. The averages, they are all averages, so they are misleading. So if I say, for example, that I'm going to reduce exportation, I export with such so I can produce, I have to consider the details of the issue. How many SKUs I want to develop in Egypt? Thousands. So I want to see what are the benefits of each. So when there is a factory that wants to produce, it's gonna find that it's not economic, money-wise or financial-wise. So they start to go to China and so on. So it's not easy, but it needs us to tackle the details. The startups started to work on these details. The emerging companies and the SMEs and the startups work far away from the statistics and the figures. From agriculture, it represents 11% of the economy of Egypt. And I have now startups in agriculture with simple technologies, with a small lab, with simple equipment, but with good brains that are able to increase the productivity of the feed with 30 or 40%. This is a major breakthrough. State has spent years without being able to do this. If we complain about the scarcity of water, there are solutions. Why we do not take actions? The dripping, the types of the crops. There are so many things to face the scarcity of water. There are so many things to increase productivity. Startups are working on these solutions. There are so many things that have to do with the circles of the whole process, to save the wastes, and so many things that are faced by the startups, and that's why we have to encourage them. Not only to encourage them, we have this now, but we have to give them opportunities to sell, to buy, to deal with the state. So state now assumes the burden of opening its own doors to these youth easily and with more flexibility. If we have a company that does recycling, could you tell me now that recycling is an industry now? Of course not. So they go to the agricultural sector because they recycle the agricultural waste. So they tell them you are not agricultural, you are doing fertilizers. So they start to go to another entity and so on. And they started to work subtly, and they sell with 30, 40 millions and subtly. And the state loses taxes. So the startups now have solutions. This is the message that I want to convey. This is the category that is well educated. We are going to complain of the education, but we have like 10% of the graduates that are excellent and that are able of being the train. There are no country in the world that has 100% of the graduates that are eligible to work. So these are good examples. And do not forget about the Egyptians that work outside and bring us their hard currency. 6 million Egyptians work and bring $260 million for Egypt. So this is our labor force that we are ranking the 15 in that respect. When we are ranking 15 with respect to labor force, I would like to see Egypt between 15 and 26 ranking in all the things and all the reports. And this is the size of the market due to our population size. But the rest of the things has not benefited from our size. So we have to encourage investment in these fields to see benefits and fruits in the other fields and sectors. Thank you, Dr. Khaled.